So we're now in the month of Adar, which is the month of great joy. Pardon the Simcha. Last week we discussed at length the theory of it. Now we're ready in the practice of it. This week is Parshas Terumah. Parshas Terumah is the parsha that deals with the building of the Mishkan. And it's actually also associated with the month of Adar, because the word Adar means Aleph Dar. The Almighty, who is called Alufei Shalayla, the master of the world, the chieftain of the world, dwells. It's interesting that many of the parshas that we read during the month of Adar deal with the building of the Mishkan to make HaKadosh Baruch Hu dwell in this world. Aleph Dar. Parshas Terumah, Parshas Tetzaveh, Parshas Kisisa, Vayakov, Pekudei, all deal until you get to Shmini when the Mishkan is finally set up and the divine presence rests in the Mishkan, manifests itself in the Mishkan. The name of the Seder this week is Terumah. And we know that names in Lashon HaKodesh in general are not haphazard. And surely in Torah, if a part of Torah has a name, it has a meaningfulness. It has a significance. Even though we normally find that the names of the Seders are chosen in accordance with the first few words of the Seder. Like Bereshis is right at the beginning of the Seder. Eila told us Noach is called Noach. Vayemer Hashem al Avram. Lech Lecha is called Lech Lecha. But nevertheless, the name is significant. And it describes the parsha. Baal Shem Tov says that everything is Shmei Asher Yikru Lei B'Lashon HaKodesh. The name that something is given in the Holy Tongue is the chayis, is the life force of the entire existence, entire being. So surely when a portion in Torah has a name, that name is connected with the significance of the entire entity, the entire being. It's very clear in this week's Seder, because this week's Seder starts by Daber Hashem al Moshe Daber al Bnei Yisrael, v'yikhu li Terumah. So the Seder could very well be called the Yikhu. Nevertheless, the Minhag Yisrael is to refer to this Seder as Terumah. And at first glance, it's a bit puzzling. Does Terumah really describe the content of the Seder? What do we mean with this question? Very simple. The word Terumah is found in the Torah in reference to various things. Terumah means separation and uplifting. Terumah means hafrasha, separation, and it means harama, uplifting. So you separate a portion of your possessions and you lift them up to Hashem. That's the idea of a yikhu li terumah. Speak to the Jewish people, speak to the children of Israel. The yikhu li terumah, they should take for me a separation and uplift it, to dedicate it to the building of a sanctuary for Hashem. Now, the word terumah we find in the Torah in reference to various situations. Our sages say that there's 10 places in the Torah where the Torah uses the term terumah. And the most common or the most popular is terumah that's taken from grain or from produce. You take 2% of the produce and you give it to the kohen. That's normally what we use the word terumah to describe. And that doesn't appear in this week's Seder. That appears in Parshas Koidach. In Parshas Koidach, you have all the laws of terumah. The word terumah is alternatively used also to describe when certain portions of the sacrifice are separated and uplifted and offered on the Mizbeach. But and in this context, it's used as far as the possessions of the Jewish people that were called upon to be uplifted and separated and donated to the Mishkan. But the word Terumah doesn't specifically describe the Mishkan. Surely the correct name, the appropriate name for this Seder should have been something that describes the topic of the Seder. And the topic of the Seder is the Mishkan. The word Terumah describes what the Jewish people are doing to give towards the Mishkan. It doesn't describe the Mishkan. In fact, in a certain sense, you could say that not only does it not describe the Mishkan, it's actually the opposite of the Mishkan. The Mishkan, the most important component of the Mishkan, is the Shekhinah, the divine presence that comes down into the Mishkan. Make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell in its midst. So the main function of the Mishkan is to cause the divine presence to come down and manifest itself in the Mishkan. Milmala lamata, from above to below. No matter what the Jewish people do, as they say, you can stand on your head and spit wood and nickels, we can't make the Shekhinah come down into the physical world. That is something that the Almighty has to do. As Shlomo Melech says, when he built the Beis Hamikdash, he said, "Hashemayim v'shmei Hashemayim lo yichaltu." The heavens and the heavens above the heavens can't contain you. Yafka abayis hazek, we expect that this house will be able to contain you. So it's a miracle. It's a divine miracle when the infinity of the Almighty can manifest itself in a physical place. So only the Almighty can perform that miracle. So no matter what we do, we can't compel the Shekhinah to be anywhere. We need it to come from above to below. The yikhu li truma, take for me a separation, is the Jewish people taking from their mundane property, their possessions, and separating a little bit of their gold, a little bit of their silver, a little bit of their copper, a little bit of their wool, a little bit of their linen, the other components that the Torah tells you to separate, and they're lifting it up. Harama, truma, malashon harama, they're lifting it up to Hashem, milmata l'mayla, from below to above. The theme of the Sedra is the Shekhinah coming down from above to below. So in a sense, Terumah goes against the theme of the Sedra. The theme of the Sedra is godliness coming down from above to below. And the word Terumah means lifting up from below to above. So it's a bit peculiar that a Sedra that's all about creating a Mishkan that's going to draw down the Shekhinah from above to below is called Terumah. Really, this question could be taken a step further. Why does the Parsha begin with Daber el Bnei Yisrael v'yikhu li Terumah? Surely the Parsha, which speaks about the building of the Mishkan, should have started with the pasuk v'asu li migdash v'sachanti b'seicha. If I asked you to encapsulate the entire Sedra in one pasuk, the pasuk you would surely choose is v'asu li migdash v'sachanti b'seicha. Make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell in their midst. In this mitzvah, v'asu li migdash v'sachanti b'seicha, there's various details. Like we find, you have to build an ark, you have to build a menorah, you have to build a shulchan, you have to build beams, you have to create curtains, a hide that's going to cover over. And one of the components, a very early state component, is you have to make a collection, so you have the wherewithal with which to build a mishkan. But that's only a detail on how to go about it. The normal way that we would expect the Torah to introduce it is, first of all, Hashem says to Moshe, speak to the Jewish people, tell them I have a job for them. The asuli migdash v'shachanti b'seicha, make for me a sanctuary and I will dwell in them. How are you going to go about it? Okay, start off now that you know what it's all about. Now the yikhu li terumah, you should now take a separation and lift it up for me, and take some gold, some silver, some copper, some wool, etc., etc. But to start off the yikhu li terumah without telling me what it's for, it's a bit peculiar. And then to name the Sedra Terumah seems to go against the whole theme of what the Sedra is all about. The Sedra is about godliness coming down from above to below. And then the name of the Sedra is about elevating from below to above. Then there's another question, a general question. Why does the Torah spend so much time telling us about the Mishkan? Terumah, Tetzaveh, Kisisa, Vayakov, B'Kudei, all about the Mishkan. The Mishkan was a temporary thing. The Mishkan only applied for during the time that they were in the desert. And for a short while after they came to Eretz Yisrael, until they built the Mishkan Shiloh, where they had a permanent structure. 14 years. So it was 40 years in the desert plus another 14 years. So the Mishkan is something which applies to that generation. It's not a mitzvah that applies for all time. Torah is not a storybook. Torah doesn't give us the history of what the Jewish people did when they were in the desert. Torah is about instruction and guidance and inspiration for us. So surely, if the Torah spent time talking about the Beis Hamikdash, I can understand the Beis Hamikdash is something which was a more permanent structure, more permanent existence. The mitzvah of building a Beis Hamikdash is for all time. Even today, we have a mitzvah to build a Beis Hamikdash. We can't fulfill the mitzvah because of external circumstances. But there is a mitzvah incumbent upon us to build a Beis Hamikdash. And very soon, the Beis Hamikdash will be built through Mashiach. Time of the coming of Mashiach, we'll have a Beis Hamikdash Ashlishi, and we'll be fulfilling the mitzvah of also the Mikdash, through the Beis Hamikdash. But the Mishkan is only temporary. Why does the Torah spend so much time talking about the Mishkan? What's the lesson for us to learn from the Mishkan? Now you might say that this is the way it works. First, you have a Mishkan, and then you develop it to a further stage to a Beis Hamikdash. So it's a process. So perhaps, just like we have to learn about the Beis Hamikdash, maybe before we learn about the Mikdash, we have to learn about the Mishkan. Just like in the building, first build a Mishkan, and later you build a Beis Hamikdash. Perhaps we also have to learn about the Mishkan and then learn about the Beis Hamikdash. But then the Mishkan exists only as an introduction to the next step. So the suggestion is being made that the significance of the Mishkan is the fact that there's no idols there, and it's different from the places of worship of the idol. That's surely much more the case in the Beis Hamikdash, which is a permanent structure, and which is and it's a mitzvah for all generations. So if the point of the Torah is to tell us the story that happened in the Midbar, then yes, you're 100% right. But the Torah is not a storybook. And if the Torah had to tell us that they built a Mishkan, it could tell us what they built. All the details are so important. What's the significance? Why did we make such a big deal of the mitzvah of building a Mishkan? What does it mean for us? So in order to address this question, I'm going to ask another question. And that is, this concept of Hashem's presence becoming manifest in our world, where did that happen significantly for the first time? So this question can actually be answered. There's two different answers to this question. And each one of these answers can be backed up and proven by Psukim and by Me'amorei Chazal. There's a famous medrash that we mentioned many times this year. Medrash says a mashal of a king who had two countries, Rabbi and Syria. And there's a border between the two countries. And the king made a gzeira, he made a decree. B'nei Rabbi lo yerdu l'Syria, u'b'nei Syria lo yalu l'Rabbi. People of Rabbi can't descend into Syria, and people of Syria can't descend into it. There's a border, and it's a closed border, and no crossing. Then one day the king decided, that's it. From now on, we're changing the rules. We're opening the border, and there's going to be open traffic going both ways. V'ani hamaskal, I'll be the first one to cross the border. So says the Medrash, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, he created the world with a decree, with a rule. What's the rule? The rule is El Yoinim La Yerdu L'Tainim V'Tachtonim La Yatlu L'Avnei. Hashamayim Shamayim L'Hashem. The heavens are for God, and the earth is for human beings. Heaven doesn't come down to earth, and earth doesn't go up to heaven. The celestial beings don't manifest themselves on earth, and earthly beings don't rise up to heaven. That's the rules. And that's the way the world functioned for 2,448 years. Until the 6th of Sivan, year 2,448, Hashem says, I'm changing the rules. I'm opening up the border. Heaven will be able to come down to earth, and earth will be able to rise up to heaven. And I will be the first one to cross the border. Shenema, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. The Almighty descended upon Mount Sinai, Ve'el Moshe Amar, Alei el Hashem. And he said to Moshe, come up to Hashem. Two-way traffic. El Yoinim Yerdu L'Tachtonim, the supernal can come down earthly, and the earthly can rise up. In other words, godliness can become fully manifest on earth, and earth can rise up to heaven, meaning you can take a physical object and use it in the service of Hashem, and it can become something godly and holy. As we do when we fulfill a mitzvah, the object with which we fulfill a mitzvah becomes holy, it becomes godly. That's something new after the Torah was given. Before the Torah was given, we didn't have the ability to do that. Even when the others, the patriarchs, the matriarchs, fulfilled the entire Torah before it was given, they didn't have the power to take the physical existences of the world and transform them into godliness and holiness. The mitzvah was a mitzvah, but the object remained mundane. After Matan Torah, when God himself came down to earth, he empowered us to be able to take earth and lift it up to heaven. So when was this event of Vayered Hashem, that the Almighty descended, the divine presence became revealed upon earth? On the 6th of Sivan, Matan Torah. Then we know the famous medrash. We quote it in the Maimer Basi Lagani, that originally the Shekhinah was on earth. Then when Adam and Chava sinned, they expelled the divine presence from earth up to the first heaven. Then when Cain sinned, expelled the divine presence from the first heaven, to the second heaven. And when the generation of Enosh sinned, they expelled it to the third heaven. And then the generation of the flood, fourth heaven, and then the generation of the Tower of Babel, the fifth heaven, and then the people of Sodom, the sixth, the Egyptians, to the seventh. And as more and more sins were committed, the Shekhinah was expelled from heaven to heaven. Then Amdu Shivat Tzadikim, and then seven Tzadikim came along. Brahma Avinu brought the Shekhinah down from the seventh heaven to the sixth. Yitzchak Avinu from the sixth to the fifth. Yaakov Avinu from the fifth to the fourth. Levi from the fourth to the third. Gahas from the third to the second. Amram from the second to the first. And then Moshe, who's the seventh, all seventh, most precious, brought it down on earth. And the Medrash says, when did the Shekhinah actually dwell upon the earth? The Yom Shehukam HaMishkan. On the day the Mishkan was set up. Right? On the eighth day, there was the glory of Hashem became manifest. The whole nation saw, and they praised, and the fire came down from heaven. So, when was the big event of divine presence coming down to earth? Was it at Sinai, on the 6th of Sivan, when Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai? Or was it when the Yom Shehukam HaMishkan, when the Mishkan was set up? In the Psukim, we find both as being the unique moment when the Shekhinah came down to earth, and the Chazal described both of them as a unique moment when the divine presence came down. Which one was it? So the answer is, there's a significant difference between the two. When God descended upon Mount Sinai, so if you remember, it says, in preparation for that event, they had to build barriers around the mountain. Big Baltos, Hahar, Savit, they had to make boundaries around the mountain. And no one could, God forbid, approach the mountain. Whether an animal or a person who touched the mountain would die instantaneously, because the holiness, the Kedusha, the divinity that was expressed on the mountain was so intense, no one could come near it. Yeah, and then Hashem himself descended upon Sinai, and there were Teilos and Brakim, there was thunder and lightning, and the whole nation trembled. It was the most incredible display of Hashem's presence on it. Then, after the whole event, the shofar was blown, and Rashi says that's a simon siluk shkin. That's a sign that the Shekhinah has departed. And then Hema Yalu Bahar, and then everybody can go for a spatzir on the mountain. No problem anymore. The same mountain that was so holy that they had to build barriers around it. No one was allowed to touch it. If they would touch it, they would die instantaneously. Suddenly, it's a regular mountain. Everybody can go for a spatzir after Shabbos, after the Tzom on the mountain. No problem at all. What happened to all the intense presence of God? The answer is that when divine presence is superimposed, it's a revelation that comes milmaila lamata, from above to below. It can be very intense because the Almighty is infinite. So His presence, when it comes from an infinite superimposition from above, is overwhelming, but temporary. Doesn't become absorbed, because the earth did not take it in internally. So when the divine presence departed, that's it. Nothing left. Of course, within the Jewish people, there was something left, but the earth didn't really absorb it. The place even of the Mount Sinai did not retain any Kedusha. Yeah. However, when Hashem comes to Moshe, tells him, tell the Jewish people. So the word, to build for me a Mishkan. Invite my presence into this world. Do something to invite me into the world. Build for me a sanctuary. And how are you going to build that sanctuary? The first thing is Terumah. What does Terumah mean? The word Terumah, we mentioned before, means separation and upliftment. When do you have to separate? You should give everything to Hashem. Why separate? You have gold, give it to Hashem. You have silver, give it to Hashem. You have copper, give it to Hashem. You have wool, you have linen, just give it all to Hashem. After all, when the Jewish people stood at the foot of Mount Sinai, they were trembling. They were ready to give, they gave their very souls up. Parshas Nishmasam, their souls expired. They weren't going to separate anything for Hashem. They were completely, we're yours. Whatever you say yes, yes. Say no, no. No questions asked. We just give ourselves up completely. But then, calm down. Everybody has to become human again. And you are a person, you have your property, you have your feelings, you have your self-awareness, and in that state, separate some of your gold, some of your silver, some of your copper, some of your wool, some of your linen, some of your oil, some of your diamonds, whatever it is that we're in the list of things that have to be given, and elevate it to Hashem. Milmata lemaila, from below to above. There is a mata, there is a below that needs to be recognized as a below. And from there is rising up, there's elevating up to Hashem, inviting Hashem's presence into the world. The Asuli Migdash. The Jewish people collectively get together and build a Migdash, a sanctuary. And then, V'shachanti v'soicham, I will dwell in their midst in such a manner that my presence in their midst is now going to be a permanent. It's not just going to be a momentary thing like it was at Sinai with tremendous trembling, and then it disappears. It's going to be a lasting one. It's going to last in the Mishkan, and it's going to continue in the Beis HaMikdash, and it's going to continue in the Kodesh Maravi, and it's going to continue through the third Beis HaMikdash. It's going to be there forever. That can only happen when it's coming from below to above. Milmata l'mayla. And that's why the name of this Sedra is Terumah. The uplifting, the separating and the uplifting that human beings do from below to above. That's what makes this unique in comparison to what we read 2 weeks ago about the event of Yisroi, of Matan Torah, when Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. Now, what's unique about the Mishkan in comparison to the Beis HaMikdash, not only in comparison to Matan Torah, when it was a great revelation from above to below, and here it's coming from below to above, but the question is also, where are you building it? When the Jewish people built the Mishkan, they built it in the desert, in the Midbar. What's a Midbar? Pasuk says, Midbar asher lo yashav adam. A Midbar, a wilderness, is a place where man doesn't inhabit. Simple meaning is, human beings don't live in a wilderness. Doesn't have the correct arrangements for human beings to live. Human beings live in a city, not in a wilderness. But the word Adam also has a deeper meaning. Adam refers to the Adam Ha'elyon, the supernal man. Remember the prophet, when he describes the divine, the throne, Kisei HaKavod, the throne of glory, he says, Va'al Demus HaKisei, Demus K'marei Adam Olav Lomar. Upon the image of the throne, there was an image of a man upon it. So the Almighty is referred to as the Adam Ha'elyon. When we talk about an image, obviously in connection with the Almighty, we're not talking about a physical image company. We're talking about a spiritual image. And we, human beings, are created in the image of Hashem. Tzelem Elokim. And that's why we're called Adam, because Adam Ela Elyon, we're comparable to the one above. So when you call a place a Midbar, Asher Lo Yashav Adam, a desert where the Adam doesn't dwell, not inhabited by Adam, it means it's a place where godliness is not revealed. It's a wilderness, spiritually a wilderness. And that's where the Jewish people were commanded. The Torah describes the Midbar as a place of Nachash, Saraf, Akra, Tzimoin, Asher Imai. It's a place of snakes, scorpions, and drought without water. That's what a wilderness is. A place where godliness is not revealed. And in that place, Yidden were instructed to build a Mishkan. Compare that with the Beis HaMikdash. Beis HaMikdash was built, first of all, in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is Eretz Asher Einei Hashem Elokecha Ba, the land upon which the eyes of Hashem are upon it, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. On top of that, it's built in Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is Yireh Shalem. Remember, we discussed this before, that in Parshas Lech Lecha, it's described as Shalem, Malki Tzedek, Melech Shalem, Hoitzi Lechem Bayayim. When Avram came back from the war with the 4 kings and the 5 kings, so it says that Malki Tzedek, the king of Shalem, came to greet him with bread and wine. And our sages tell us that Shalem is Yerushalayim. And Malki Tzedek, the king of Shalem, was Shem, the son of Noah, who came to welcome Avram after the war, and he brought out bread and wine. So Yerushalayim is called Shalem in Parshas Lech. Parshas Vayera, when it talks about Avram bringing Yitzchak to Yakedah, it says that Vayikra Hashem Hamakim Ahu, Hashem Yireh. He called the name of that place Hashem Yireh. That was on Mount Moriah, the place where the Yakedah was. That was Yerushalayim. So in Eretz Yisrael itself, it's in Yerushalayim, which Yerushalayim is Yireh Shalim. That's where the word Yerushalayim comes from. Take the two words Yireh from Parshas Vayera and Shalim from Parshas Lech Lecha, put them together, you get Yerushalayim. Yireh Shalim, complete fear of Hashem. In Yerushalayim itself, it's by the Sha'ar HaShamayim, by the gate of heaven. As you remember, Yaakov in his dream, he recognizes that Sha'ar HaShamayim. This is the gate of heaven. This is Beis Elikim, it's the house of God, and it's the Sha'ar HaShamayim. And that's where the Jewish people built the Beis Hamikdash. But in the Midbar, they built a Mishkan in a Midbar Shalayash of Adam Sham, a place where it's not a place for human habitation. And they built a house for God there. So there's a tremendous lesson of it. We're speaking about the greatness of bringing it from below to above, right? Where it's not natural, where you don't have all the lights flashing, as you did by Sinai. Here you're going in a wilderness, and you're taking from your gold and from your silver and from your copper, and you're separating it, and you're lifting it up to Hashem. So in life in general, we have moments of inspiration. All the lights are flashing, and we're going to be very dedicated. We want to do everything. That's fantastic. But there's also other moments when you're in the desert, when you're in the wilderness, in a spiritual wilderness. There's no godly revelation. Person feels in his life he's right now going to a state where godliness is just not flowing through the system. And in those circumstances, when a person takes a little bit of his gold and a little bit of his silver and a little bit of his copper and a little bit of his wool, and a little bit of his linen and a little bit of all the components that he has, and he separates them and he lifts them up to Hashem, that creates the Asuli Mikdash V'Shachanti V'Soicham. That's the sanctuary that Hashem wants to. And an amazing thing, the Rambam, when he talks about, it's famous, it's very controversial, because the Rambam talks about third Beis Hamikdash, as opposed to Rashi and Faithful and many Midrashim, when they talk about the third Beis Hamikdash coming down from heaven. The Rambam talks about the third Beis Hamikdash being built by the Tiach, and everybody's going to participate. So he says over there, Hakol Chayavim L'Sayed Ba'atzma, Ubim. Everyone has to participate physically, build the Beis Hamikdash, and monetarily donate towards the Beis Hamikdash. Anoshim v'noshim, men and women, kimigdash hamidbar, like the sanctuary in the midbar. Sanctuary in the midbar, we all read in the Chumash how everyone participated, both monetarily and also physically. They built. The women did the most talented work. Anoshim ashenasa liba meisana b'chachma talu esa'izim. So everybody participated, both monetarily and physically. So he says by the third Beis Hamikdash also everyone has to participate, men and women monetarily and physically, kimigdash hamidbar, like the sanctuary of the desert. Now, we do normally refer to it as the Mishkan. Why is suddenly the Mikdash Hamidbar? So the Rambam is telling us that there's something special about the Mishkan. It's called the Mikdash Hamidbar. It's the sanctuary that was built in the wilderness. And the power that we have to eternally be able to draw down the presence of Hashem all the way to the third Beis Hamikdash, where it's going to be brought down in the most amazing way. All that comes from the Mikdash HaMidbar, from the sanctuary in the wilderness, when a Yid finds himself in a state of Midbar, and then he separates from his possessions and from his time and from his energy and from his dedication, and he gives to make a dwelling place for Hashem, that has the most incredible. Mishkan? Mishkan, very good question. Okay, the question Mrs. Goldblatt is asking is, when they built the Beis Hamikdash, what happened to the Mishkan? So the answer is that anything that Moshe Rabbeinu put his hands on was eternal. So the Mishkan was never destroyed. Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. The Mishkan was never destroyed. It was concealed underneath the Beis Hamikdash. Okay? Now there are various stages to the Mishkan, because there was the Mishkan that they had in the desert that was brought in and set up in Gilgal for 14 years. Then they built the Mishkan Shiloi, and then after the Mishkan Shiloi was destroyed, there was a temporary Mishkan in Noiv and Givon, and from there they came to Yerushalayim. But whatever part of that structure was from the structure that Moshe Rabbeinu built was concealed underneath the Beis Hamikdash. So it depends which kalim. Where the question is, were the kalim of the Mishkan used in the Beis Hamikdash? I'm repeating the question because people on Zoom can't really hear. Those of you who don't have a microphone next to you. So the answer is depends which kalim. So, for example, the Aron was the same Aron, the Menorah was the same Menorah. The Mizbeach was not the same Mizbeach. The Mizbeach in the Beis Hamikdash was a much larger Mizbeach. The Mizbeach on the Chesed. Well, in the Beis Hamikdash it wasn't called Mizbeach on the Chesed. It was Mizbeach Adama, Mizbeach Avonim. So there's certain things that were and certain things that weren't. The what of the Mishkan? The altar of the Mishkan. I would assume it says that the Mishkan was nignats. It was concealed, and so I guess whatever parts of the Mishkan were not used in the Beis Hamikdash were concealed. Mishkan. So were ordinary people allowed into the Mishkan? There were certain parts of the Mishkan that everyone who was Koher was able to go. But the actual Ohel Moed itself, the structure itself that was built with the boards of cedar wood covered in gold, that only the Kohanim entered. That was like the inner sanctuary. But there was a chutzner, the courtyard around the Mishkan, where the people came to bring their karbanos and everything. As long as they were Kohen. It's a very good question. The Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt. What will happen to the Mishkan? And this is discussed. And obviously, the spiritual aspect of the Mishkan will definitely be included in the Beis Hamikdash. And how much the physical components of the Mishkan will be included in the Beis Hamikdash, that we'll wait and see how it's exactly going to play itself out. But there's no question about it that everything in the Mishkan is eternal and will have an eternal role in making the presence of Hashem grow. The Menorah and the Aron, yeah, I mean the Aron is buried underneath the Beis Hamikdash from the time of Yoshiyahu. So the Aron of Zichar be there. Okay, how long was it from the time the Torah was given until the instruction was given to build the Mishkan? So Rashi says that Vayakel Moshe in Parshas Vayakel gathered the entire Jewish people and told them this is what Hashem instructed. He says that was the day after Yom Kippur, right? So the Torah was given on the 6th of Sivan. Moshe Rabbeinu went up for 40 days, and that's when the Egel happened. And Moshe Rabbeinu went to pray for the Jewish people to be forgiven for the Egel. 40 days, and then another 40 days to get the second half. Came down on Yom Kippur. The day after Yom Kippur, he told the Jewish people the instruction about the Mishkan. When exactly he was told the instruction about the Mishkan, there's various opinions. But Rashi clearly says, according to Pshut Mikra, the instruction to build the Mishkan came on the day after Yom Kippur. Now, there are various opinions about this, but this is Pshut Mikra. Well, they came down to earth very quickly with the Egel. Okay. So unless there are any other questions, we're going to move on to Tanya. In Tanya,
Can I ask a question? I don't know if you can hear me.
You can.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. Just one question regarding the boundaries between heaven and earth. So when they were when the separation was removed, it seems that really, if it's only our avodah that can make a difference to actually elevate this world, then what's the point of mentioning about the heaven coming down? Because if Hashem came down and it didn't make an impact, then it's only based on us. Then the relevant point is that we can rise to heaven, not heaven can come down.
Very good question, and the people that are here in this room want me to repeat the question. So the question is, according to what we learned today, it's all about us rising upward to invite the Shekhinah, right? But what comes from above doesn't really achieve anything. So what was the point of having the whole event of Matan Torah if what makes it happen permanently is only the Terumah, the elevating from below to above? And the answer to that is
even just mentioning the fact that the heavens came down and the earth when it was able to rise, because otherwise Har Sinai would have been affected. It would have been changed.
Okay, so it's a very good question. The answer to that is like this. The purpose of the purpose of the heaven coming down to earth is to empower the earth to be able to rise up to heaven. Empowers. In other words, the reason why for 2,448 years this could not have happened was because there was never a Vayedet Hashem al Har Sinai. Because Hashem didn't come down on Har Sinai to break the barrier to empower the earthly to be able to reach upward. So we are empowered by the moment of Matan Torah. And now the question is, what are we going to do with that empowerment? If we're just going to sit there lame and say that was a very nice experience, let's write a book about describing how inspiring that was, then it's not going to get us anywhere. The purpose is that we should take the empowerment that we got from the experience of Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai and turn it into V'yikuli Terumah, so that we build a Mishkan in which the Shekhinah will dwell permanently because we have invited it into our presence. But we only have the power to do that when we're empowered by Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. Is that satisfactory?
Yes, thank you very much.
Very good. Okay. In Tanya, we are on page Ayin Beis. We're in the middle of chapter 51, quite a complicated chapter.
269, 270. 269 and 270.
269 and 270. Thank you very much. So, Suffering, you're very loyal to your task. Okay, so the numbers on the bottom of the page are 269 and 270. The number on top of the page is Ayin Beis. So we are continuing on the same topic that we spoke about before. The topic being the Shekhinah, the divine presence, being drawn down into this world, the Mishkan. And the question that we had since we started learning this chapter, we're focused on the question, what is the Shekhinah? What is the Shekhinah? I was once in a shul, I went Shavuos to speak in a shul, and a man came over to me, and he said he had the most incredible experience. He was traveling on business, and he was in Florida, and he went into the Bal Harbor shul, and they have a minhag over there that every day after davening, somebody reads out the portion of Tanya. That day's portion of Tanya, somebody reads out after davening. So it was just a few days before Shavuos. And the portion of Tanya that was being read then was this chapter 51. Or maybe it was 52, it was this subject. And the question came up, what is the Shekhinah? What is the Shekhinah? What's the divine presence? Hashem is everywhere. So if you say that the Shekhinah dwells in the Holy of Holies, the Shekhinah dwells in the Mishkan, or the Shekhinah dwells where there are 10 Jews, or when Jews are studying Torah and doing mitzvahs, well, what is the Shekhinah? If it's Hashem, Hashem is everywhere. Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere, right? Up, down, right, left, falling out, here, there, everywhere. That's where he can be found. So where's the Shekhinah? What's the Shekhinah? And he said to me, I'm in my 50s. I grew up from. I went to yeshiva. And all these years, it never dawned on me to ask this such an obvious question. What is the Shekhinah? It's been part of my vocabulary for the last 50 some odd years. And I never stopped to think what it means. So this is phenomenal. So the question over here is, we spoke about in earlier chapters of Tanya that we have to be concerned with the Shekhinah that is upon our head. And we said, according from the Zohar, that the Shekhinah that is upon our head is like a flame, and we need to continuously feed it with fuel. And the fuel with which we feed that flame is mitzvahs, ma'asim tovim, good deeds. We have to feed that fuel with good deeds. So the question is, let's first work out what is the Shekhinah, so we can talk about what it means, what we have to fuel, what we have to do. If we don't know what the Shekhinah is, what are we doing? And again, if it means the Almighty is everywhere. Okay? So we said that we can explain that by first understanding. We mentioned earlier that we're called Adam because Adam Ela Elyon. We are comparable to the one above. So if we want to understand things about the Almighty, it helps to understand them in ourselves first, and then we can work out, similar to the way things are in us, which is much easier for us to understand. We could take that same concept and apply it to the Almighty. So the same question we can ask about ourselves. We have a soul. The soul gives life to our body. Where is the soul? In what part of our body is the soul? We have to say that the soul is everywhere, right? We have to say the soul is everywhere because we're alive. Every part of our body is alive, so obviously it has a soul. And also the soul is an indivisible entity. It's a oneness. So it can't be, it's over here more than over there. It's one entity, an indivisible entity. So it's not in one place more than in another. On the other hand, we see clearly that there are different parts of our body that express life more than others do. Right? In our head, in our brain, is much more intense form of expression of life than there is in other parts of the body. So what's going on? And why is it that all of the body derives its life force from the brain? And we mentioned last week that, God forbid, if a person suffers a stroke and there's a cutoff from the brain to a certain part of the body, that part of the body has a hard time functioning. So obviously life force comes from the brain. But if the soul is everywhere, then what aspect of life force comes from the brain? Everywhere has soul in it. So we obviously see over here, the way the Alter Rebbe explains it is three different things. There's the essence of the soul, which is indivisible and is everywhere equally. The whole body equally. No difference whatsoever. We can have the essence of the soul is in the brain, in the heart, in the toes. You're alive, you have a soul, and the soul is everywhere. Then there is the individual life force that gives individual life in accordance with the specific character of each limb and each organ, and the energy and the life and the ability to function. The koyach that each organ and each limb has, like the eyes can see, the ears can hear, right? So that is different in every single part of the body. Every part of the body gets that in accordance with its unique character and its unique composition. No two parts of the body get that life force from the soul the same. Each one gets it in accordance with its ability to contain and its function. Now, where is that coming from? It can't be coming directly from the soul itself, because we just decided that the soul is an indivisible identity, an indivisible entity. If it's an indivisible entity, then you can't cut off a piece and send it over here and send a piece and send it over there. So we worked out that there's an in-between stage. The in-between stage is like the unit that is contained within the soul and is the source of all life force and energy coming from that unit to every single part of the body individually in accordance with the character traits of that part of the body. Where is that unit? That unit is the Mishkan HaNefesh. And that unit is present in the brain. And that's why, first of all, the brain is the place where there's the most intense expression of life. Life itself is equally everywhere, but the expression of life is most in the brain. And the brain is the source from which every single component of the body gets its life force and its strength and its ability to function is coming from that unit which is in the brain itself, which is manifest in the brain. And that is not the soul itself. That is the aspect of the contained within the soul, which is the source of all individual life and energy. So we have three different levels. The soul, the essence, the essence of the soul. The chayis prati, the individual life force and energy that comes to every limb individually, and the source of all that life force and all that energy, which is in the Mishkan HaNefesh, which dwells in the brain. Now, once we've had that, we've become clear in how that works in the human condition. We moved on to how that is comparable now in the divine condition. There are many worlds, higher worlds and lower worlds. We learned last. Where is Hashem? He is equally everywhere. He is not, you can't put him in a box and say he's over here and he's over there. And he's equally concealed from the higher worlds as he is from the lower worlds. We learned last week that he's called Stimu B'chol Stimun, the concealed one of all the concealed ones. In other words, even those worlds which to us are called concealed worlds, they're beyond our comprehension, because they're so lofty, he's just as concealed from them as he is from us. Because he's infinite. Nevertheless, there is a manifestation of Hashem's presence in all the worlds, and it's different in every world. It's different in every world, it's different in every creation. First of all, it's different in every creation according to the capacity of that creation and the character trait of that creation. So every creation gets divine life and energy in accordance with its capacity. And then we also have, there's more concealment. As you go down the chain of worlds, you reach a greater level of concealment than we do in the higher world. That differentiation that there is between one world and another is not coming from the essence of Hashem, because the essence of Hashem is an indivisible entity and it's everywhere the same. It's present everywhere and it's concealed everywhere. And where's that coming from? Where's that differentiation coming from? That differentiation is coming from the unit, which is the source of all divine life and all divine energy in all the worlds, which is contained within Hashem. But it's not him. It's his manifesting himself in a general way, which is the source of all the individual manifestations that come into all the worlds. And that is called the Shekhinah. But before we get there, we have to become clear that there is, just like in the human body, there are many, many organs and limbs in the human body, and each one gets a different form of life and energy from the soul. So the same is true in creation. There's tremendous variety and differentiation in creation. So I think we're going to start from the line. It's about 12 or 13 lines from the top. The line starts Nimtza b'tachtonim mam. So just above the middle of the page. And we're going to start from the words v'hahevdo. See, there's a full stop, and then it says v'hahevdo. Everyone have the place? Just above the middle of the page, about 10, 12 or 13 lines from the top. 11 lines from the top. Thank you very much. And we're up to the words v'hahevdo. So the difference between the higher world, where there's a greater manifestation of Hashem's presence, a more intense manifestation of Hashem, and the lower worlds, where there's a lesser manifestation of Hashem's presence, is caused by the drawing down of life force, which the infinite light of Hashem draws down and shines in a state of revelation from the concealment. In other words, there is a unit in which all this divine energy and divine life force is concealed, and from there it is revealed. This is one of the reasons why the effusion of life and life force and energy from godliness is called light. In the Kabbalists, the Kabbalim describe the divine energy in the world as light. One of the reasons for this is because generally when you talk about an energy coming into something to make it live, to make it function, it can either be light or it could be flow, like a flow of one of the differences is that when a luminary gives off light, it's not losing anything. The luminary is, and the light shines spontaneously. It doesn't have to exert itself to give off light, and it's not giving anything away. While when there is, let's say, a teacher explaining something to a student, so first of all he has to exert himself, has to put himself in. Second of all, he has to bring himself down to the level of the student. He has to adjust himself. That's a whole different experience. In Hashem's essence, there's no change. There's no exertion. So therefore, the description that the Kabbalim use to bring this point out is they describe it as divine light. We spoke in the previous chapters about the Ein Sof, the infinite light of Hashem, and then we spoke about a contracted light. But it's all about light. And in this context also, since we have a Helam, there's a concealment. There's where that energy exists contained in a source. And then there is the way it comes forth. So that's called because it's revelation from concealment. And the purpose of that system is lahachiyus ha'elamis v'habruim shebahem, give life to the world and all the creations within them. So the higher worlds receive this light in a somewhat greater measure of revelation than the lower worlds do. So even though we said that all the worlds, God is concealed in all the worlds, but this source of light and life force that gives life to the worlds, in the higher worlds, they're more aware of it, they feel it more, it's more revealed to them than it is in the lower world. I used the analogy in the past. I'll repeat it again because I think it communicates the point very well. I told the story of Paran when Yaakov Avinu came to Mitzrayim. It was the second year of the famine. So Yosef brings Yaakov to Paran, introduces him to Paran, and it says, "Vayivarech Yaakov es Paran." Yaakov blessed Paran. So our sages say, what was the blessing? The blessing was that he blessed Paran, that whenever Paran comes to the Nile should rise to greet him. The waters of the Nile should rise to greet him. Now we know that in Egypt there's no rain. How does Egypt survive? They survive. Their irrigation comes from the fact that the Nile rises and floods, and they built canals, bring the waters of the flooding Nile into all the different places where they have things growing, crops growing, and that irrigates all the crops. During the famine, there was no overflowing of the Nile, so there was no irrigation. So everything was dry, and nothing could grow. That was the famine. When Yaakov comes to Paran on the second year of the famine is supposed to be for 7 years, right? 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine, and the famine was so intense, it was devastating. And Yaakov comes along to Paran and he gives him a bracha. The Nile should rise to greet him. The next morning, Paran comes to the Nile. And guess what? It rose. The Nile rises, it floods, irrigates the whole Egypt. Famine is over. So if Paran was a shtickle man, the next morning he would have gotten on national media and he would have said, Rabbi, you won't believe what happened. There's an incredible tzaddik called Yaakov. He came to Mitzrayim, he's very much connected to Hashem. And he gave me a bracha, power of the creator of the world, that when I come to the Nile should rise to me. And guess what? It happened. And the famine is over. Let's celebrate and thank Hashem for his incredible kindness. What did Paran do? Paran got a national meeting. And he said, there's great news. You won't believe it. I want to tell you, I'm God. I'm God. I'll prove it to you. What does God do for a living? He sustains the world. From now on, I'm sustaining the world. Every day I come to the Nile rises to greet me, and it floods the country, and it irrigates all the crops, and everybody's going to have plenty of sustenance because of me. Right? So there's two ways to the same energy and the same power and the same blessing can be recognized as a gift from Hashem and bring about a tremendous thanksgiving and subservience and dedication to Hashem. Or it could be seen as, well, it's all about me. It's all about me. Forget about Hashem. Nobody needs Hashem anymore. You know the famous parking place story. The guy was going around the block again and again looking for a parking space. Hashem, please give me a parking space. And then finally, just as he's about to, and bang, this car pulls out just where he needs it. And he says, Hashem, it's okay. I'm fine. I don't need you anymore. Yeah? So the question is, do you feel the revelation of godliness in your life, or do you not feel the revelation of godliness? So the highest world is called Atzilus. Atzilus is the word Etzlei V'Samuch. It's right next to it. It feels Hashem's presence all the time. In fact, so intensely that it feels Hashem's presence, it doesn't feel its own presence. It doesn't feel its own existence. It only feels Hashem.
Pharaoh couldn't acknowledge Hashem because his whole family tree is based on that. He's in charge. He's the representative.
Okay, I'm not getting into now why.
I know, but
I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to explain the difference between higher worlds and lower worlds. So the highest worlds are the worlds where there's total recognition that everything is from Hashem. Yeah. As you go down the chain of worlds, you become less aware of Hashem, and you become a little bit more aware of your own presence. right? And as you go further, it gets getting more. And then when you get to the lowest ring in the chain, which is this physical world, we're totally aware of our own existence, and we completely are unaware of Hashem's existence, unless we make a concerted effort to draw it into our awareness. But naturally, the way the world is set out, there's such a concealment, such a darkness, that we're completely unaware. So he says that the higher worlds receive a little bit more revelation than the lower worlds do, and it goes, there's a whole chain of worlds. And each chain, each level on the chain is receiving its divine energy in accordance with its capacity, with its nature, and the way, and its state of awareness or lack of awareness. It's definitely more revealed in the higher world. Yeah, we're going to learn later about the actual presence. So far, we're talking about how much it's revealed. So in the higher world, it's a little bit more revealed in each world. As it goes down the chain, it becomes a little bit less revealed, and there's so many links to the chain, and it becomes more concealed and more concealed and more concealed. Correct. It's more of a challenge, and that's why it's more fresh. Thank you for adding that in. And all the creations within all these worlds, each world receives in accordance with its ability and its character, its composition. Which is the drawing down, the specific drawing down and specific character that the infinite light of Hashem draws down and shines to that specific world and that specific creation. Now, this could be, when we talk about different character, it could even be on the same level of revelation or concealment. It could also be different character. Like in the world of Atzilus itself, you have 10 spheres. You have intellectual spheres, emotional spheres, you have a sphere of kindness and love, a sphere of intense reverence and fear. So that one isn't higher than the other, but they're different one from another. And because they're different one from another, each one gets life force adjusted to its specific character. Just like in the human body, you have the eyes and the ears. The eyes get the power of vision, and the ears get the power of hearing. And the nose gets the power of smell, and the mouth gets the power of speech. Each one has to get in accordance with it. What's for it? Then he says, the lower worlds, even the spiritual lower worlds, don't receive with so much revelation. Rather, they receive through many garments, in which the infinite light of Hashem encloses this life energy and this light, which is drawn down to them to give them life. So it keeps, there are many garments that conceal. In other words, when we speak about the higher worlds, we spoke about the fact that they get different life energy in accordance with their character. That's to match their character, match their capacity. But we weren't focused so much on the concealing, on the levushim. When we talk about the tachtonim, when we talk about the lower worlds, even the spiritual lower worlds, we're speaking here about garments which garb the light. So when light is garbed in garments, and especially if there's many garments, the light is not recognized. So the light is coming from Hashem, and it's doing the job of giving us existence and giving us life. But the identification of that light is a problem. So there's a certain sense of, I'm here because I'm here. Where do I come from? Why am I here? I've never thought about these things. So as you go to the lower worlds, that becomes more of an issue. The garments in which the light is garbed conceal the identity of the light. So we're less appreciative and less recognize the fact that we're indebted to Hashem for His kindness and for His life force, because it's garbed in so many garments we don't identify it. The cholkach, the otzmu v'gabru halavushim, and then these garments become so intensely strong, in which the infinite one, He encloses and conceals His light and His life force in them, to the point where He created a corporeal physical world. and he gives it existence and light through the life force and the light which is drawn down and shines into it. A light which is enclosed and covered over and concealed within these many and intense garments, which conceal and cover over this light and this light. To the point where when you look at the recipient of the life and the life force, you don't even see any light and life force at all. You see corporeal, physical things that appear to be dead. In other words, even in the physical world itself, you have human beings, you have animals, you have vegetables, and you have minerals. And the minerals, they look dead. You don't see any life in them. The truth is that if they didn't have any life in them, any divine life in them, they wouldn't exist. Because we know that everything exists only because the Almighty, in his power of creation, creates from nothing to something every second. So there's a divine energy that makes things exist. But the divine energy is so covered over and so concealed, you look at this box of tissues, you don't see any life. If there was no divine life in here, it wouldn't be here. But it's so covered over, especially in the case of the inanimate and the still, that you mamish don't see any life at all. And you can convince yourself that there's no life here, just existing. But the truth is, it's totally life. Because if for 1 second the divine life and energy that's creating it would stop, it would disappear, like it never existed. But it's all because of the fact that there's so many coverings and so many concealments. And as you go down the line, from the higher worlds to the lower world, all the way down into our physical, corporeal world, it's totally concealed. But we're going to learn further, look at this next week in Hashem, that within that concealment, there's actually a very intense presence of divine energy. And then we're going to learn that all these varied divine manifestations of energy are all coming from a certain unit of divine energy, which is called the Shekhinah. Just like in the human body, all the different forms of energy and life that are giving the different organs and limbs of the body their varied life force and their varied capacity, varied strengths and potentials, are all coming from the Mishkan HaNefesh, which resides in the brain. So we have to work out exactly what is the Shekhinah and where does it reside. In the human being, the Mishkan HaNefesh resides in the brain. Where is the brain of the world? To be continued. We're going to get there. Can't learn Kol HaTorah Kula Regala.
Going back to Parshas, when we came to the field, we came as a whole. We were getting nothing. But in Egypt, you forced to build it, you looked for the business. You look at other things, but paying people to do it for them. And it looks good for their sake. We must be going to pay at the moment with nobody got any personal.
Interesting. Thank you.
That was anything.